I just think one of my driving forces is just me being able to exist as a Black music educator in the classical space is going to inspire someone else.
Hello, 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 everyone. My name is Denae Taylor. Today we have a special episode of Born in Color. We're doing performance in color or music in color with a very special guest today. Before we get into it, I'll give you a quick bio on her. So, Kiara Taylor is a classically trained bassoonist and mezzo soprano. She is about to receive her Bachelor's of Music in Music Education from CSU Stanislaus, and she's my older sister. Clock that T. Okay, so we're gonna get into this about Black classical music and performance in the world of Black classical music, growing up in the music space, navigating that as a student but also a musician. But yeah, we're just gonna get started. Hey, Kiara.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so what were you doing before this? Like, how was your day?
Well, right now it's our final season is just like concerts for almost every day of the week for 3 weeks straight. So, I was practicing a little bit for some of those and doing some chores.
Period. So we'll start at the very, very like central part, very close to you. What was your introduction to classical music and music performance in general?
Sorry.
um I this question is mainly to speak about like going all the way back to elementary school, like the first time you picked up an instrument. How did you get started? Why did you even choose to join? Yeah, all about that.
Um, so I think I was introduced to music or performing music in a way a lot of people were in elementary school, where the director from either the middle school or the high school came to by and was like, "Here are all the instruments you can play in a sort of like Pokemon starter Pokemon setup. Like here's a trumpet, a clarinet, and like a flute, and you can pick one." And I picked the clarinet. Um, and yeah, I think I was encouraged to do it because our mom was such a musical person, and that was such a part of our lives growing up. And I just thought it looked cool after the demonstrations, and everyone got to try it. And I was like, this one.
hmm Do you remember those first songs you played, like Hot Cross Buns and what else?
It was all hot cross buns. It was all Go Tell Aunt Rhody and like just all the folk songs, which is actually interesting because having taken all the music education courses now and sort of analyzing it from a black lens, so many of those method books, you remember Essential Elements
Yeah.
or like Principles of Excellence and something like that. A lot of those like basic songs, they're like minstrelsy songs. If you look into it, and I'm like, oh, this is what y'all got us playing?
But it's just so
Interesting.
tradition, like why would they change it?
And it's like, yeah, it's like it's so old, and it has become, I think, culturally removed from that time, but that is where a lot of those songs start
Yeah.
and had their beginning, so you can't completely untie them.
I did not know that. Whoa.
Mhm.
That's crazy. Well, kind of going off that, like, as you got into like the middle school realm, how did your perspective or how did your performance change as you got into middle school and you kept going? Because a lot of people they start elementary school and they stop, but you decided to keep going. So what was that like going to middle school?
I think, well, I've always really enjoyed singing, but there's sort of the feeling that anyone can sing. You know what I mean? Give if they practice enough and they
Mm,
they dedicate themselves enough to it. With an instrument, I think it's a different level of dedication because it's outside of yourself. You need to commit yourself to taking this thing and learning it, you know? And I always really enjoyed that. That was my favorite. One of my favorite parts of school was band and learning this instrument. I went from clarinet to bass clarinet in middle school, and then at the end of middle school, I went to bassoon, and I've stuck with bassoon ever since. But also, I think one of the key factors in band and getting students to stay in band is just that sense of community. It's like when you're picking your schedule for seventh grade and you're asking your friends, what are you doing for elective? And they're like, band. I'm like, okay, well, that's what I'm doing then. Because that's where all
yeah.
my girls are, that's where my boys are, you know?
Yeah. That's cool how you mentioned kind of the transition to bass clarinet. Like I think it would have been I don't know. This is. I hope this doesn't sound shady, but like playing it safe and sticking with clarinet. Like, what made you like kind of take a risk and be like, no, I'm gonna try bass clarinet, or I'm gonna try bassoon once I leave.
I think, well, what happened to me is what happened to a lot of younger musicians, where the ensemble they're going into needs a bass clarinet, and the director's like, "Hey, which one of y'all wants to try this?" And me being me, I was like, okay, well, I feel like I've kind of got the clarinet now. I'll try something new. And it's an easy transition because the fingerings are the same. It's just an octave lower. But there's still some differences. So you are learning a new instrument. And it's always, I think, really cool to feel like, oh, wow, I can play multiple instruments.
Wait, I feel like a lot of people do clarinet to like the saxophone pipeline. Why didn't you go to saxophone?
I don't know. I wasn't like a big fan of jazz in
Okay.
middle school. I really liked being on the bass line and kind of holding it down in that way. And I don't know, there was less bass clarinets in the ensemble, so I felt
Hmm.
more special,
Weird.
felt unique.
It's weird because for me, I feel like mine was just so not balanced because I started clarinet in middle school, but then I got to middle school, no, in elementary school, and I get to middle school and I'm like, yeah, I'll play euphonium. Sure, I don't know, sure, I don't know.
I
I'm in color guard
mean,
too, I don't know.
that's I think that's a lot of that's a common pathway for people. If they you either like really enjoy the that starter Pokemon instrument you picked, or you're like, this sucks, and then you
Yeah,
move on to something else.
yeah.
You're like, this is not for me.
That's cool, but also kind of that switch, like, do you just now prefer playing those like parts of songs? 'Cause I know some people they prefer being part of the melody, or some people will prefer being part of that bass line. Like, what is your preference?
Well, I think and part of it has to do with when I'm singing, I'm the alto line usually, or the mezzo soprano line, which is not the melody, but sort of the spicier part beneath it. And that's something I enjoy a lot with the bassoon because that's often a part that's the part it plays in the orchestra or the wind ensemble where it's not always the melody, but it is the kind of more interesting harmony or counter melody beneath it that sure, if you take it out, the song will still or the piece will still function, but it's not going to sound as interesting or complex.
Yeah. What's interesting about bassoon is that like once you switch to that, like what did you kind of rely on? Because that's not really it's a rare instrument to play, and it's also more difficult than other instruments. So like, was it YouTube videos? Were you finding like old performances? Like, what were you really looking towards? Because no one around you was playing it.
I was entirely self-taught all through high school, which is pretty common for the bassoon, unfortunately, because it's such a rare instrument and people don't know much about double reeds in general. I guess the average band director, I mean. Um, so I was YouTube videos and hopes and dreams that kept me going. But also, the funny thing about the bassoon is, as soon as I picked it up, every like adult I met was like, "Ooh, somebody wants a scholarship."
Mm.
Like for years, and they were right because I did get a
Yeah.
scholarship.
Oh, I feel like I didn't touch on it, but like, not just being in the classroom, which we'll get to being a part of wind ensemble and stuff, but like the honor bands where you got to meet kids from other schools. Like, what was that like for you? Because I know I really enjoyed it when I did it one year.
I thought it was always really fun. I thought it was because usually you're not just playing with people who are your age. Maybe they're 2, 3 years older, and that's 2, 3 years more on their instrument. And so I think it makes you better. Some people get like scared when they start playing with musicians who are like at a higher skill level than them. I think it makes you they lift you up because then you start matching their technique. And
Yeah,
you start if you get lost, you're looking over and you're seeing what their hands are doing or what their mouth is doing, and you can just copy that.
yeah. I would love if you could speak to like, obviously if you're in a band, it's collective effort, but I do feel like it can still be very individualistic and like I'm doing this thing, I want to be better than the person next to me, or I want to be section leader in my section. It's like
hmm
my solo effort to do this. Like, how do you feel about that culture, or if you think that's there any either way?
I think I think um like being in a band, while the end product is definitely like team oriented and created by the collective, everything before that is entirely individualistic. Like outside of the rehearsal space, it's on you to practice. And that's the difference between practice and rehearsal. Rehearsal is you taking your part and seeing how it syncs up and lines up and blends with everyone else. Practice is all of the hours, blood, sweat, and tears before you get to that rehearsal space.